okay?
Very good.
I hope you're all okay with me using English though, because that's about it in my Estonian. As introduced, I was former Vice Mayor of Stockholm 2006 and 2010. But I've been involved with politics starting 1988 actually, as a young moderate, and been a member of the City Council of Stockholm since '94. But after the election 2010, I decided not to actually stay in the council, but to look outside and continue what I've done before, working in the private sector. And I'm sure you're quite aware of that some of the city councils, elected city councils, are, well, they have their political assignment on their free time. So I've been working in the private sector almost all the time, full-time, until 2006. So I have lots of experience both from private sector and public sector. And it's a pleasure for me, of course, to be here today and maybe inspire you a bit. I'm going to talk a lot about dialogue with citizens and decentralized decision making. So I hope that you will take part in this dialogue as well and ask questions, and if I'm not clear or if I speak too quick or something like that, you will stop me. I will just go through a bit of how Stockholm looks like, so you will see what we're comparing with, because to my experience, it's difficult sometimes to compare one system with another if you don't know the differences, because there is one vital difference that I'm going to point out just soon. But Stockholm works like this. We have 880 residents, and they elect both to the municipality, but also, of course, to the national parliament and also to the county council on the same day every 4th year. And in the City Council of Stockholm, there are 101 members, 50-50 men and women. And we have 40,000 people actually employed by the city, working then to implement all the decisions taken by the politicians. And of course, they are also the ones that on a daily basis have a lot of contact with the residents and the citizens in the city, which of course the members has as well, but not on the same topics. So this is a little bit, I'm not going to go through this in detail or anything like this. I'm just going to point out a few things which I'm going to come back to. But of course, the most important thing when we're talking about the city of Stockholm is the 101 members. It's the city council that can decide a lot of things, and I'm coming back to that. And of course then we have the city executive board, which are quite often gets delegation from the city council on different things. It also exists of elected members. And we have a council of mayors, and the majority mayors have different things that they are in charge of. For instance, I was responsible for city planning and real estate and housing during my period, and that's what these small squares are all about. You can actually choose how you're going to divide the city after an election. So it's the mayor and the vice mayors who decide how the organization is going to look like. So it doesn't have to be traffic and labor market division put together. And for instance, when I was vice mayor, we had as a real estate and city planning together, and now they're split. So it differs. But the interesting thing maybe is that we have also then 14 district councils, and I'm coming back to that as well. 16 specialist committees and 16 companies as well. So we have quite a broad spectrum of different things. And why is that? That is, of course, because we in Sweden have local taxes. And if you look at the percentage, that doesn't look very well at all, actually. It doesn't look like that in my computer at home. I'll see if I can do something about that. Oh, never mind. I'm going to tell you the big thing here. The big thing here, of course, then, is the net income for a citizen. And then we have the bigger box up there, or that one, that is for the council, or the county council, which takes care of the public transport, the health care, and so on. And that light blue thing there, that is the local tax that goes to the municipality, and the city council can decide a lot of how to spend the money. There are regulations and laws as well from the state that tells us what we have to provide. We have to provide school, we have to provide elderly care, daycare, and so on, because it's laws, but not how we're going to do it, just that we're going to do it. See if the other one looks the same. No. So this is actually the budget of the city of Stockholm, which is basically almost, well, up to 78% local tax. So you see why the citizens are quite interested in what we're doing in the city of Stockholm. And then we have also revenue from operations, municipal property fee, which is a small thing, and then some financial revenue and expenses. And this is, I think, an important background to also give you the hint of why it's of big interest for the citizens of Stockholm to take part in dialogues and go to open meetings and so on. This is just to show you the variety of different things that we're doing within the city. And you're going to be aware of that in this or in some of the others as well. The City Executive Office is a central and strategic role in the city's government. And it's the civil servants there who decides how to implement the political decisions out in the different city district councils and in the specialist committees as well. So these are all very important civil servants that works here. So they have to really, really listen carefully what the political will is. And the three directors here are changed as well after an election. So they are political assigned. But of course the day-to-day operation is taken care of by the city's administrations and companies. And they are headed by politically appointed committees and boards. These are then Stockholm's 14 district councils. When they were introduced in the mid-90s, they were over 20. But then it has gone the other way around compared with the discussion here. We have centralized a little bit more than was the case when they were introduced. So they're divided and they are not all the same size, but approximately 20 to 30,000 inhabitants. And then, of course, their responsibility is quite broad still. Leisure activities for children and young people, municipal preschool, income support, budgetary consultation and debt restructuring, consumer advice, that's not so much, but local business issues, local urban environment issues, and maintenance of and investments in parks, you know, the visible things for people, service and care for people with disabilities, social services, care and treatment, and also some family law, and then the elderly care. It's quite a big amount of the total budget that are taken care of in the district councils. But the council's members, they are appointed by the city council, so they are not directly elected by the people who actually lives within this geographical area. They are appointed by the city council. Usually they live in the area. They don't have to live in the area, but of course most political parties want to have their local politicians on a local assignment. And then we have specialist administrations, which the city, the municipality, is responsible for. And that is the same thing all over in Sweden. We have a labor market administration, the Stockholm City Development Administration, City of Stockholm Real Estate, Sports Administration, Culture, cemeteries, that has to be there as well, Environment and Health Administration, Service Administration, Social Services and City Planning, Stockholm City Archives are there as well, and Traffic and Waste Management and Education. So it's quite a broad spectrum of responsibilities. And adding to that as well then all the companies, and I'm not going to go into details on this either. I'm just going to give you the feeling that there are lots of things that the municipalities in Sweden are responsible for, and bearing in mind we have the opportunity to tax the local people, it's even more important to have an active dialogue. This is also something I would just make you aware of, that of course a member of the City Council can make a suggestion of something, and then the motion is sent to the responsible committees, which make their views come into a pronouncement. So it goes all the way, basically, through the city's different committees, and all the committees exist of politicians that are elected somehow, and during a lot of these committees and meetings, we also have the opportunity for citizens, and I'm coming back to that as well, to give their view, or organizations or other institutions on how this is going to affect them, if it's good or bad, or so on. And then when that has happened, it comes back to the vice mayor that is responsible for this area. And then, of course, he or she writes a proposal, what's likely to happen with this motion, and then it's sent to the Council of Mayors for drafting. And then it goes all the way down to, finally, the Executive Board and the City Council. And then it goes down to the division, and then has to be implemented as well. So everything goes round within a circle or a diagram like that, to make as many people within the city actually give their view on a proposal or a motion. So this is as a background, short, not so short maybe, but very brief, without too much details. But bearing in mind again that we have the opportunity to tax, and also that I think that we have a lot of Stockholmers who are well educated and like to have influence at their work or at home. They also want to have influence of the service that the City Council provides. And I would like to start with actually why we should have citizens' influence and participation, because sometimes people, naturally think it's easier if it's just a few people that decides a lot. Then it gets much quicker, that's for sure. Maybe not so good or as good as it could be. But of course it's more democratic like this, more freedom and individual decisions if I as a citizen also can have the opportunity to influence something that actually I am really, really bothered about, if it's a road that is not working, or if it's the services or the quality at the elderly care center or something like that. Who do we represent within the national or regional parliament? I think that is something that we sometimes actually forget about. That politicians, they are representing the people. It's nothing that is there and a nuisance or something like that. The dialogue with the voters, the people that has actually elected oneself, is really, really important. And I think that all the politicians that can grasp that and make people actually get inspired by the opportunity to have direct contact with their representative within the parliament or within the municipality is going to gain. It's going to gain both trust but also respect and the feeling that it's a much, much shorter distance between the decision makers and the citizens, and that is good for everyone. And if we think about it, it's quite a long time between elections as well. I mean, if you just have to meet the voters once every 4th year or every 5th year, that's quite a long time. And it's not really respectful either to be rather quiet for 4 years and then ask for another term. Better decisions when more information is taken into account. Of course, if people around us give input, this doesn't work, this works, this is good, this is not good, of course that gives us much, much more information to take a better decision on. Better quality on the services. Of course, if you're an elected politician, you don't have any clue of how that particular elderly care works, or the preschool next door if you don't have kids yourself. I mean, you don't have a clue, basically. So listening to the citizens around will make it also much, much better quality-wise. Well, I put up happier and more satisfied citizens, of course, because human beings are like that. We want to take decisions. We want to take part. Sometimes we don't care. I mean, we have representative democracy in Sweden and in other countries in Europe. So it's quite nice not to always have to say what we think and decide and so on, and somebody else will do that. But when we really want to do it, we want somebody to listen. And that makes us happier and more satisfied. And I also think from the citizens' point of view, we will have a much, much more increased understanding for the systems. Because I think that during a dinner conversation or something, I think we all have been in a room where there is always someone complaining about the system and the politicians, they're crazy and they don't understand anything at all. But if we actually invite people in our surrounding to take part in this discussion, this prioritization, or making priorities, they will understand also that it's not always easy. They will understand why it's not possible to take a specific decision. For instance, as I've understood how it's organized in Estonia, it's not possible to always decide everything on a local level, since we don't have the right to tax, for instance. We have the money we receive and that's it. We can't just say, well, yeah, we will, as we talked about, we will make a big swimming pool here, but who's going to pay for that? Of course, it's easy to wish for a lot of things, but if the money are not there, so that is also one big important thing, increased understanding for the system. And increased engagement and sense of responsibility among the citizens. Of course, that is almost the same thing as understanding for the system. I think that if you have the opportunity to get engaged, you're also much more willing in the future maybe to get involved with politics as well. You see that you can actually make a difference. How often can't we hear other people in our surroundings saying, oh no, I won't say anything because they don't bother. I mean, no, they won't do anything anyway, so I will just be quiet. That's quite boring and not very good for in a democracy. And human beings' constant need to be listened to and respected becomes a source of energy which can lead to more involvement, as I said. but also, as I think anyway, as a politician during many years, it was an energy for me as an elected politician as well, to actually know what people in the surroundings, out in the city, was thinking, what they were doing, what they missed, or what they actually were satisfied with. That was a strength for me in the debates. Otherwise, we have not a clue what we're talking about when we actually debate what is good or what is bad. So these are some examples how it works, how it can work, and how it often works in Sweden and in Stockholm. For instance, we have when it comes to city planning and building permits, we are by law, it's mandatory to actually have consultations with people that lives nearby, or anyone who wants to come, for instance, at open meetings. You have to have a consultation if your neighbor is going to build an extra building on his land, or if the city wants to build a new hotel in the city center. You have to ask the citizens of their opinion. You don't always have to do what they think, but you have to invite them to give their view. We have citizens' proposals in some of the city district councils. That means that anyone can write down a proposal, if it's a bench in the park, or better food in the preschool, or anything like that. And it has to be taken care of by the civil servants and finally the politicians in the district council, saying yes, no, or we will think about this, or we will take it with us during the budget process, or something. One interesting example in the city center of Stockholm, in one of the biggest parks, is that there was a suggestion to make a place for ball dancing during the summer. And that is now a place for ball dancing in this big park in Stockholm. So it's actually possible, but you have to be specific, and also, of course, it's always good if you're going to tell the politicians where you think they should take the money for doing it. And then, of course, we have a lot of open meetings when decisions are taken. When it comes to city district councils, for instance, they are all open meetings, starting with 1 hour of questions from the citizens, whatever it can be something that will be taken decision about later on during the evening, or something completely different. And then when the decision-making meeting is starting, it's still an open meeting, even though it's not possible for the citizens to interrupt and so on. But it's a way to, I don't know really what it is, because it's really boring sometimes, so I'm not sure if they get frightened of being involved with politics, the citizens that are actually sitting there, because sometimes political meetings are not so funny. But at least it's an open door, and it's possible to actually see what it's all about. Citizens' engagement meetings with different topics. This is something that's going on generally in Sweden. It can be something specific about the environment, or garbage care, or something about if it's going to be a park somewhere. It's organized around different topics to make it possible for citizens actually to leave their view on what they think about specific things. And then, of course, within parties, we have individual meetings with candidates, and that's what I mentioned before, not only when it's election time, which I know it is during the autumn here, but on a regular basis, because we represent the voters or the citizens. And that link has to be more clear, I think. Of course, we can do door knocking, as they are really, really good at in the United States. But it's also one of those things that I have been working a lot with, and that is approaching people in the street. asking them, not telling them what you think, but asking them what they think. And then form the politics after what you hear from the citizens, because you are representing the citizens. It's not the other way around. Sometimes it could be the other way around because you have a strong vision. You really want to achieve something specific. And then, of course, you go out and have this big, speech of what you want to achieve. But mainly, it's about hearing what other people think that you should do. And I think that is also something that Swedish politicians should be much, much better, and Swedish parties as well, should be much, much better at. I mean, how often do we get these flyers? I don't care what, whatever name it is, what he thinks. I mean, I should, as a voter, I'm more interested in knowing that he wants to know, or actually that he is interested in what I think. So it's a little bit around there, and I think that the parties here in Tallinn at the autumn that can reach out to most people face to face, asking them what you can do for them, so to speak, is going to be successful as well. It also gives, since I know that there are lots of groups that don't vote here, it also gives them a reason to vote. If they have met you or your colleagues or other politicians, they will feel, oh, yeah, you were nice, I will vote for her, yeah. Instead of just, seeing names in the paper or on a leaflet. E-services are quite, that's quite a broad, sometimes it requires a lot of an administration, but it's really, really interesting to look into how can I see what happened at the preschool today? Can I give feedback? It's more, maybe not a dialogue with the citizens, it's more of actually engagement and information direct to the people that take care or use the services. Service, which I just mentioned, service user dialogue. And all this includes both politicians and civil servants, since we have civil servants that will implement the political decisions. They also have to listen to what is going on out there. And then finally, I will just mention and the next slide, or the last slide, I really, since you've been so quiet, really want to discuss around. There are, of course, some pitfalls when we talk about dialogue, influence, and consultation. And that is, you have to ask yourself what you're going to have the dialogue. Why are you having a dialogue? Because if you're not interested in the result, you shouldn't have a dialogue. So that's the first thing, actually. And the second thing is clarifying the roles. Planning, realization, and taking the results forward. That is also three different things. If you don't do it in a strategic way, it's not really any use either. And we have to admit that there are different perspectives. Citizens in Stockholm, for instance, that pay a lot of tax, they want to know that we are doing the right thing. Maybe they don't have any kids at preschool, so they don't really care about, or they are not, well, maybe they care, but they're not directly, they haven't seen anything specific about the quality, for instance. They want to know if we're doing the right thing for them. By the organizational part of the society thinks, oh, what's in it for me? Can we make an offer? Can we start work with this? Can we, And then we have the users that have direct information and gives the perspective. Of course, they think, if I have a kid, which I have, at preschool, I think that they should spend much more money on preschool. And I'm not so interested in what happens somewhere in the suburb because I live in the center. But that's a perspective you have to be aware of course. You have to distinguish between dialogue time and decision time. You can't really have a dialogue when you have already decided. That's kind of, wasted time for everyone. And you have to choose the right topics for dialogue. If it's very, like for instance, you can ask yourself if dividing the municipality is a topic to ask the citizens if it's good or not, which you have been talking about here during the afternoon, because it's quite organizational. Why is that a topic for citizens? Isn't that a typical thing that we leave to our politicians to organize? Especially when it's obvious that some services can't be provided because the municipality is too small. So that is something that you can think a little bit about. I don't know, I'm just throwing it out here. And also clarity about what can be influenced. If we have a dialogue, if we have discussions about things that can't be at all influenced, that's kind of, I've said also almost like it's the wrong expectations are lethal, because then we have citizens that are not satisfied. They are angry because they went to a meeting, they thought you were listening, but obviously you were not. So then you have actually received the opposite, reached the opposite. And then, I think you know what I mean when I'm talking about reaching, it should be seldom there, of course, heard groups. It's always the same people that comes or calls you or other politicians around. There are never the quiet mass, as you usually say. How do we reach young people that won't commit to come to an opening meeting, for instance? How do we listen to people that work full-time and don't have time to go to meetings or to write emails or to call or whatever? So sometimes, actually, when we're talking about all these ways to have consultations and so on, it can be more unequal democracy if we choose only to listen to the ones that shouts the loudest. So, finally then, for the last minutes, I would like you not to actually focus so much on this, but this is maybe a conclusion that the dialogue must be meaningful. But I will open the floor for questions, comments, and so on about, well, generally what we've been talking about.